Professor Buell sat in her small laboratory late at night. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of translation machines. She had been working on these stone pieces for 3 months now. The fragments came from Morthek, a planet that died long ago. Nobody lived there anymore. Only ruins and dust remained. These stones were special. They were 60,000 years old. That was older than most species in the galaxy. Bile was one of the best at reading old languages. But these symbols were different. They twisted and curved in ways she had never seen before. Her 4 arms moved carefully as she arranged the pieces. Each fragment was no bigger than her hand. The stone was black and smooth. Strange marks covered every surface. Some symbols looked like stars. Others looked like creatures she did not recognize. For weeks, the text made no sense. Buell tried every translation program the Celestial Institute had. She compared the symbols to thousands of dead languages. Nothing worked. The stones kept their secrets locked away. Then tonight, something changed. One symbol group suddenly became clear. The meaning hit her like lightning. The words spelled out Ingan. Her breath caught in her throat. This was an ancient word for humans. Bile's crystalline eyes began to glow brighter. This happened when she was confused or excited. Right. Now she felt both. Her mind raced as she stared at the symbols. This could not be right. There had to be some mistake. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were the newest species to join the galactic community. Humans had only learned to travel between stars 200 years ago. Before that, they lived on one small blue planet called Earth. They were young and inexperienced compared to other races, but here was proof that humans existed 60,000 years ago. That was impossible. The Zephyrian Empire was only 40,000 years old. The wise ethereal collective had been around for 50,000 years. Even they were younger than these stones. Bile picked up another fragment. Her hands shook slightly. She ran the translation program again. More human references appeared. The stones talked about sky people from the third world. They mentioned star walkers who came before the great darkness. The professor stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the capital city of Vexthar stretched to the horizon. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived here. Flying cars moved between tall buildings. Spaceships came and went from the orbital docks. This was the center of galactic civilization. But according to these stones, humans were here first. They had walked among the stars when this city was nothing but empty space. The idea made Buell feel dizzy. She returned to her desk and picked up her communication device. Her first thought was to call her supervisor. Professor Keth would want to know about this discovery right away. But something stopped her. What if she was wrong? What if the translation was bad? She would look foolish. Bile decided to work through the night. She needed to be sure before telling anyone. The stones held more secrets. Each symbol might change everything the galaxy believed about human history. As she bent over her work again, Buell had no idea that her discovery would soon shake the foundations of known civilization. The truth about humanity was about to emerge from the ancient past. Professor Buell worked for 3 days straight. She barely ate or slept. The stone fragments consumed all her attention. Each new translation made her more shocked than the last. What she found challenged everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The ancient writers called humans skywalkers from the blue world. This had to mean Earth, the human home planet. But these stones were written when Earth should have been nothing but a primitive world with early life forms. How could ancient aliens know about a blue planet so far away? Even stranger were the descriptions of what humans could do. The tablets said they bridged the void before void had meaning. Bile read this line over and over. It seemed to say that humans traveled through space before space travel was even invented by anyone else. They moved between stars when other species had not yet discovered fire. But the most disturbing part came next. The ancient scribes did not write about humans like they were simple or backward. Instead, they called them first shepherds. This title meant something important. Shepherds guide and protect sheep. The tablet suggested that humans guided and protected other species as they grew into spacefaring civilizations. Bile found story after story about human intervention. When the Corvan species almost destroyed themselves in nuclear war, Mysterious visitors taught them better ways to use atomic power. When the Tellurians faced a deadly plague, unknown benefactors provided the cure. Every story matched the same. Toington. Young species received help from beings they could never identify. The professor's hands trembled as she translated more text. According to these records, humans had shaped galactic development for tens of thousands of years. They were not the newcomers everyone believed them to be. They were the original architects of interstellar civilization. Then, Buell found the most shocking revelation of all. One tablet section was titled The Great Silence. Her translation program struggled with the complex ancient grammar, but slowly the meaning became clear. The Great Silence was not a natural event. It was a choice. The tablets explained that humans deliberately erased themselves from galactic memory. They removed their names from history books. They destroyed monuments built in their honor. They even changed the genetic memories of species they had helped. Every trace of their presence was carefully wiped away. But why would they do this? Buell read deeper into the text. The answer made her feel sick. The humans had realized something terrible. Their constant guidance was making other species weak and dependent. Young civilizations stopped trying to solve problems on their own. They just waited for human help instead. The ancient scribes wrote that human leaders held a great council. They debated for years about what to do. Finally, they made an impossible decision. They would remove themselves from galactic affairs completely. They would let other species grow and develop without interference. The tablets described how humans faked their own disappearance. They made it look like their civilization had collapsed or been destroyed. Some humans went into hiding on primitive worlds. Others traveled to distant galaxies. A few remained as secret observers, watching but never interfering. Buell sat back in her chair. Her mind reeled with the implications. If these tablets were true, then humans were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were the oldest and most advanced species anyone had ever known. They had voluntarily given up their position of power to help other species become independent. But now humans were returning to galactic society. They were pretending to be young and inexperienced. Nobody suspected the truth about their real history and capabilities. Buell knew she needed help. The stone tablets were just the beginning. If humans really had an ancient history, there would be more evidence somewhere. She called her research assistant, Hyun, into the laboratory early the next morning. Hyun was young, but brilliant. She had 6 arms and could work on multiple projects at once. Her purple skin changed color when she got excited about discoveries. Right now she looked confused as Buell explained what she had found. "Professor, this sounds impossible," Hyun said. Looking at the translated tablets, "Humans are barely 2 centuries old as a space species. Everyone knows this." "That's what I thought too," Buell replied. "But look at these translations. Help me search the restricted archives. If this is true, there must be more evidence hidden away." Hyun nodded and got to work. She had access to databases that most researchers never saw. These contained information too sensitive or controversial for public viewing, government files, military reports, and archaeological data that raised uncomfortable questions. Within hours, Hyun found the first piece of supporting evidence. Deep in the Galactic Survey archives were star charts from 30,000 years ago. These maps showed trading routes and outposts across the galaxy, but something was wrong with them. "Professor, look at this," Hyun called out, her skin turning bright orange with excitement. "These old charts show settlements on worlds that we classify as uninhabited. But when I cross-reference them with current human colonies, they match perfectly." Buell rushed over to see. The evidence was clear. Ancient star charts marked human presence on dozens of worlds that supposedly had no intelligent life until humans arrived 200 years ago. Either the old charts were completely wrong, or humans had been there long before their official first contact. Hyun dug deeper into archaeological databases. She found report after report of strange discoveries that had been dismissed or explained away. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, excavators had found human-like tools buried under rock layers that were millions of years old. The official explanation was contamination from modern mining equipment. On the agricultural planet of Tau Ceti F, farmers regularly found metal objects that looked like human technology. but carbon dating showed they were impossibly ancient. Scientists called them natural formations that coincidentally resembled artificial objects. The pattern repeated across hundreds of worlds. Wherever humans had established recent colonies, archaeological evidence suggested they had been there before, much longer before than anyone wanted to admit. But the most chilling discoveries came from extinct civilizations. Hyun found the final, transmissions of dozens of species that had vanished from the galaxy over the past 50,000 years. These messages had been stored in deep archives and forgotten. "Professor, listen to this," Hyun said, playing an audio file. The voice belonged to a Vraxian commander from 20,000 years ago. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "They return to us now, as was foretold. The ancients emerge from their long hiding. We welcome our original teachers. Back to the stars. Our civilization ends, but theirs begins again." Similar messages came from the Keltharan Empire, the Twisted Claw Federation, and dozens of other dead civilizations. All spoke of ancients, or first ones, returning. All mentioned that their own time was ending to make way for something greater. Hyun's skin had turned deep blue, a sign of fear and worry. "Professor, what if these species didn't go extinct naturally? What if they made room for the ancients to return?" Bile felt cold despite the warm laboratory air. The evidence was building into a terrifying picture. Humans were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were ancient beings who had orchestrated their own disappearance and return. And every time they came back, entire civilizations seemed to vanish, to make space for them. The question was, what did this mean for the current galactic community? Beale spent 2 weeks preparing her research paper. She organized all the evidence carefully: the stone tablets, the ancient star charts, the archaeological reports, and the final messages from dead civilizations. Everything pointed to the same shocking truth about human history. She planned to present her findings at the next Galactic Archaeological Conference. This would be the biggest revelation in galactic history. Beale imagined the headlines across 1,000 worlds. The discovery would make her famous throughout the galaxy. But then strange things started happening. Professor Kent from the linguistics department was the first to read Beale's preliminary report. He became very excited and asked to study the original stone fragments. 3 days later, Kent suffered a terrible accident. His personal flying car malfunctioned and crashed into a building. He survived but was badly injured and lost most of his memory. Dr. Zara from Archaeological Sciences was next. She examined the ancient star charts and became fascinated by the implications. Within a week, she slipped and fell down a flight of stairs at her home. The fall broke several bones and damaged her neural processes. She could no longer remember anything about Beale's research. Hyun noticed the pattern first. "Professor, this is not normal," she said, her skin turning pale with worry. 3 colleagues have had serious accidents in 2 weeks. All of them were studying your research." Beale felt a chill run through her body. She had heard rumors about researchers who studied forbidden topics. Sometimes they faced mysterious setbacks. Equipment would break, data would disappear, funding would dry up. But she had never believed the stories were true. Then the digital attacks began. Files started vanishing from secure databases overnight. The ancient star charts disappeared first, then the archaeological reports. Even backup copies stored on isolated servers somehow got deleted. Someone or something was systematically erasing all evidence of human history. Beale worked frantically to preserve what she could. She made physical copies of everything. She hid backup drives in different locations, but every day more evidence disappeared. It felt like fighting against an invisible enemy with unlimited resources. The attacks became more personal. Beale's computer crashed repeatedly. Her laboratory equipment malfunctioned. Strange messages appeared on her communication devices, warning her to stop her research for the good of galactic stability. One night, Beale stayed late in the archive building to work on her remaining files. The building was nearly empty. Only a few security guards patrolled the halls. She felt safer there than in her own laboratory. Around midnight, she heard footsteps approaching. Beale looked up from her work and saw a figure walking toward her. The being was unlike any species she had ever seen. It was tall and thin, with smooth grey skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Its eyes were large and completely black. "Professor Buell," the creature said, in a voice that sounded ancient and tired. "My name is Veltar. We need to talk." Buell's hands moved toward the emergency alarm, but Veltar raised one long finger. "Please do not be afraid. I am not here to harm you. I am here to explain what is happening to you and your research." "Who are you?" Buell asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am one of the keepers," Veltar replied. "We are the guardians of suppressed truth. For 50,000 years, we have protected certain knowledge from the general galactic population. Your research has uncovered one of our most carefully guarded secrets." Veltar moved closer, but his posture remained non-threatening. "The accidents that befell your colleagues were not random. The disappearing data is not a coincidence. We have been watching you since you first translated those stone tablets." Buell felt her heart racing. "You're trying to stop me from publishing the truth about humans." "Not stop," Veltar corrected. "Prepare. The truth you have discovered is more dangerous than you realize." Veltar gestured for Buell to sit down. His ancient eyes seemed to hold the weight of countless years. "What I am about to tell you will change how you see the entire galaxy," he said softly. "The humans did not disappear. They chose to vanish." Buell leaned forward, her crystalline eyes glowing with curiosity. "What do you mean they chose to vanish?" 50,000 years ago, humans ruled the galaxy," Veltar began. "But not in the way you might think. They were not conquerors or tyrants. They were teachers and guides. Every species that reached for the stars found human mentors waiting to help them." The old being's voice carried sadness as he continued. "For thousands of years, this system worked well. Young civilizations learned from human wisdom. Wars were prevented. Diseases were cured. Technologies were shared freely. The galaxy prospered under human guidance." Buell tried to imagine such a time, a galaxy where humans acted as benevolent guardians for all other species. It sounded almost too good to be true. "But power corrupts even the best intentions," Veltar said. "As millennia passed, human society began to change. They became comfortable in their role as supreme beings. Some humans started to see other species as children who could never grow up. They made decisions for entire civilizations without asking what those civilizations wanted." The keeper walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. "Worse, the other species began to depend on humans for everything. When faced with problems, they stopped trying to find solutions. They just waited for humans to fix things. Entire civilizations became helpless without human support." Buell felt a chill as she understood the implications. The galaxy was becoming stagnant. "Exactly," Veltar nodded. "Human leaders saw what was happening. They realized their presence was preventing other species from reaching their full potential, so they made the most difficult decision in galactic history." The ancient being turned back to face Buell. They decided to remove themselves completely from galactic affairs. But they could not simply leave. Other species would have searched for them. Wars would have broken out over human technology and territory. So they chose a more drastic solution. Veltar's voice dropped to almost a whisper. They orchestrated their own mythical downfall. Human leaders created false histories about civil wars and plagues that destroyed their civilization. They spread stories about human arrogance leading to their extinction. They made sure every species believed that humans had failed because of their own flaws. Buell gasped. They made themselves into a cautionary tale. Yes, but the deception went much deeper than false stories. Humans physically removed themselves from known space. Some groups traveled to primitive worlds and lived as simple farmers and hunters. They deliberately abandoned their technology and knowledge. Other groups went into deep space far beyond where any species would explore. The professor's mind raced as she processed this information. But how did they erase all evidence of their presence? Very carefully and over many centuries, Veltar explained. They destroyed their own monuments and cities. They altered genetic memories in species they had helped. They even changed the physical properties of artifacts to make them appear younger than they really were. Every trace of their advanced civilization was methodically erased. Veltar continued. A few humans remained behind as observers. they took new forms and identities. Some became members of the Keepers, like myself. Others integrated into various species as secret watchers. Their job was to make sure the deception held, and to prepare for an eventual return. Return? Beale asked. The humans always planned to come back someday, but only when the galaxy had proven it could stand on its own. Only when other species had developed their own wisdom and strength. The return would not be as rulers, but as equals in a mature galactic community. Beale looked at the stone tablets on her desk. And that time is now? Veltar smiled for the first time. Your discovery is one of many signs. The galaxy has grown, strong and independent. It is ready to learn the truth about its hidden guardians. Veltar looked at his communication device. A soft blue light pulsed on its surface. It has begun, he said quietly. Your discovery was one of several triggers we have been waiting for. Across the galaxy, the awakening is starting. Beale felt her heart racing. What kind of awakening? For 50,000 years humans have lived in hiding, Veltar explained. They pretended to be simple farmers, miners and traders on primitive worlds, but they were always ready. Now the time has come to reveal their true nature. As if responding to his words, news alerts started flashing on Beale's computer screen. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Strange things were happening on human worlds that nobody could explain. On the agricultural planet of Kepler 438b, human farmers had been struggling with a deadly crop disease for months. The planetary government was preparing to evacuate the entire population. Then overnight, the humans revealed technology that could cure the disease in hours. Equipment that should not have existed appeared from nowhere. Similar reports came from the mining world of Proxima Centauri C. Human miners had been using basic tools and simple machines for decades. Suddenly they activated massive underground facilities that dwarfed anything built by other species. These installations had been hidden beneath the planet's surface all along. How is this possible? Beale asked, reading the incoming reports. The humans never truly abandoned their technology, Veltar replied. They hid it, deep underground in asteroid bases, even in pocket dimensions that other species cannot detect. They have been maintaining and improving their capabilities for thousands of years. More news alerts appeared on the screen. On the diplomatic world of Vega Prime, something extraordinary was happening during a routine trade negotiation. The human ambassador, a woman named Tai, had been known as a quiet and inexperienced diplomat. She usually deferred to more senior representatives from other worlds. But today, Tai spoke with authority that stunned everyone in the room. She referenced trade agreements from thousands of years ago that most species had forgotten. She knew details about ancient wars and treaties that existed only in the deepest archives. When challenged about her knowledge, she simply smiled and said, "Humans have longer memories than you might think." On another world, Ambassador Nari was addressing the Galactic Security Council about a border dispute. For months, she had seemed like a typical human diplomat, earnest but naive about galactic politics. Now she spoke with the wisdom of someone who had witnessed countless similar conflicts across millennia. The Zephyrian Empire and the Corvan Alliance have fought this same war 7 times before, Nari told the shocked council members. Each time, it ended the same way. Would you like me to explain how to break the cycle? Veltar showed Beale a holographic display of the galaxy. Dozens of points of light were blinking across the map. Each light represents a human facility coming online, he explained. Space stations that have been dormant for centuries are powering up. Ships that were thought to be derelict are launching. Humans are activating assets they have kept hidden across thousands of worlds. The reports kept coming. On the frontier, world of Ross 128b, human colonists had been living in simple settlements for generations. Now massive city-sized structures were rising from underground complexes. The colonists moved through these facilities like they had lived there all their lives. Military observers reported seeing human ships that defied known physics. These vessels appeared to fold space around themselves, traveling vast distances in moments. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything other species possessed. But the most important changes are not technological, Veltar said. The humans themselves are changing. They are dropping their masks and showing their true nature. Bile watched video feeds of humans across the galaxy. Their body language was different now. They moved with confidence that came from ancient knowledge. When they spoke, other species instinctively listened. There was something in their voices that commanded respect. They are remembering who they really are, Veltar continued. For thousands of years they lived as ordinary people, but they were never ordinary. They are the galaxy's first children, its original guardians. Now, they are ready to reclaim that role. The awakening was spreading faster than anyone could track. Humanity was emerging from its long sleep, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Leaders from hundreds of worlds gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime. The air buzzed with tension and confusion as species tried to understand what was happening across the galaxy. Chancellor Vrex of the Altarian Federation stood at the central podium. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by visible worry. "We are facing an unprecedented situation," he announced to the packed assembly. "Human colonies across 17 sectors have revealed advanced technologies that surpass our understanding. We need answers." In the military section, Admiral Cross of the Zephyrian Empire was reviewing battle reports on his personal display. For decades, he had dismissed human military capabilities as basic and unimpressive. Human ships were small and simple. Their tactics seemed outdated compared to advanced species. But everything changed 3 days ago during a pirate raid near the Tau Ceti system. A human patrol fleet led by Admiral Wu intercepted the raiders. Cross expected a typical skirmish with predictable human strategies. Instead, he witnessed something impossible. Admiral Wu commanded her ships with tactical knowledge that spanned millennia. She anticipated enemy movements before they happened. Her fleet executed maneuvers that combined strategies from dozens of extinct civilizations. The pirates, who had terrorized the sector for years, were defeated in minutes, without a single shot being fired. "How did she know about the Keltharan pincer movement?" Admiral Cross muttered to his aide. "That tactic has been lost for 20,000 years. When questioned after the battle, Admiral Wu had simply smiled. "Humans have been dealing with pirates for a very long time," she said. "We remember what works." Similar reports came from diplomatic circles. Ambassador Hana, who had represented humanity in trade negotiations for only 5 years, was suddenly demonstrating negotiation skills that amazed veteran diplomats. She resolved a 3-way territorial dispute that had lasted for centuries. During the negotiations, Hana referenced historical precedents that other species had forgotten. She knew about ancient trade routes, extinct languages, and cultural practices that predated recorded galactic history. When asked about her knowledge, she simply said, "Humans have been good listeners for a long time." The breakthrough moment came when Chancellor Vrex demanded direct answers from the human delegation. "Your species claims to have joined Galactic Society only 200 years ago," he said, his voice echoing through the assembly hall. "Yet your people display knowledge and capabilities that span tens of thousands of years. Explain this contradiction." The human ambassador, an elderly man named Jun, stood slowly. His appearance was unremarkable. Average height, graying hair, simple clothing. But when he began to speak, his voice carried weight that made the entire assembly fall silent. "We have not been entirely honest about our history," Jun admitted. "Humans did not discover space travel 200 years ago. We have been traveling between stars since before most of your civilizations learned to make fire." Gasps echoed throughout the hall. Several ambassadors stood up in shock. The Crystalline Collective's representative began glowing brighter, a sign of extreme agitation. Jun continued calmly. "We were your teachers, your guides, your protectors. We helped you reach for the stars. We shared our knowledge freely. We prevented wars and cured diseases. For thousands of years we watched over the galaxy like parents caring for children." "Impossible," shouted the Corvan delegate. "There are no records of ancient human civilizations." "Because we erased them," Jun replied. "We realized that our constant guidance was making you dependent and weak. So we chose to step back. We hid our true nature, and let you grow on your own. We became farmers, miners, and traders. We pretended to be young and inexperienced. The hall erupted in angry voices and confused questions. Jun raised his hand for silence, and somehow the noise stopped immediately. "But now you have proven yourselves," he said with pride in his voice. "You have built great civilizations without our help. You have solved problems and overcome challenges on your own. The galaxy has grown strong and wise. It is time for us to stand beside you as equals, not above you as guardians." The truth was finally revealed. Humans were not newcomers to galactic civilization. They were its founders, its architects, its original children returning home. The revelation at the Galactic Council sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the same impossible story. Humans were not newcomers to space. They were ancient guardians who had shaped galactic civilization for thousands of years. On Altara Prime, Chancellor Vrex called an emergency cabinet meeting. His advisors sat around the holographic conference table, their faces showing fear and confusion. "If humans have been watching us all this time," whispered Defense Minister Kala, "what else do they know? What secrets have we kept that we thought were safe?" The fear was justified. For centuries, the Altarian Federation had been secretly funding pirate raids against smaller species. They had covered up environmental disasters and suppressed scientific discoveries that might threaten their power. If humans had been observing everything, there would be consequences. But other species reacted very differently to the news. On the peaceful world of Serenity, the Gentle Collective held massive celebration gatherings. Their ancient songs spoke of first teachers who would return in times of need. Eldamira addressed her people through planet-wide communication networks. "Our ancestors remembered," she said, her voice filled with joy. "The old stories were true. The Sky Shepherds have come home to us. We must prepare offerings of gratitude and welcome them with open hearts." Similar celebrations occurred on dozens of worlds. Species that had maintained oral traditions about ancient benefactors recognized the truth immediately. They began preparing festivals and ceremonies to honor their returned guardians. But darker reactions came from governments with guilty consciences. The Zorathi Empire had built its power through conquest and oppression. Emperor Zarex sat on his crystal throne, surrounded by his war council. His red eyes glowed with anger as he processed the implications of human return. "They think they can come back and judge us," he snarled at his generals. "They abandoned their responsibilities 50,000 years ago. They have no right to interfere." Now, General Vex, the Empire's top military commander, studied tactical displays showing human positions across the galaxy. "My lord, our intelligence suggests that human military capabilities far exceed our estimates. Perhaps we should consider diplomatic solutions." Emperor Zarex slammed his fist on the throne's armrest. "Never. The Zorathi Empire bows to no one, especially not to species that hide like cowards for millennia. Begin mobilization of the entire battle fleet. If these humans want to reclaim their ancient role, they will have to fight for it." Across Zorathi space, massive war machines began awakening. Battleships that could destroy entire planets started moving toward human territories. The Empire was preparing for the largest military campaign in its history. Meanwhile, on the trading World of Commerce Station Beta, different concerns arose. The merchant guilds held emergency meetings to discuss economic implications. Guildmaster Trock, a shrewd businessman, worried about market stability. "If humans possess technology thousands of years ahead of ours," he told his fellow merchants, "every trade agreement becomes meaningless. They could crash our entire economy overnight if they chose to." Some guilds decided to immediately offer exclusive partnerships to human colonies. Others began hoarding resources, preparing for economic warfare. Religious groups across the galaxy faced their own crisis. Many species had developed beliefs about divine beings who had guided their early development. The Church of Eternal Stars. On Vega Minor went into emergency theological discussions. "Are humans the divine beings our scriptures describe?" asked High Priest Corin. "Should we worship them as gods returned or treat them as equals who chose to hide their nature?" Different. Religious groups reached different conclusions. Some proclaimed humans as divine messengers. Others declared them to be false gods who had deceived the galaxy. On the frontier worlds, reactions were more practical. Colony governors worried about jurisdiction and authority. If humans had secret claims to planets they had helped develop, what did that mean for current governments? Governor Park of New Seoul sent urgent messages to human diplomatic representatives. "We welcome clarification of your intentions," her message read. "Our people are willing to negotiate new arrangements if needed. We hope for peaceful coexistence." But the most interesting reactions came from species that had gone extinct during humanity's absence. Archaeological evidence suggested that some civilizations had chosen to end themselves when they learned of humanity's planned return. Were more species considering the same option? The galaxy stood at a crossroads. Some species prepared for war, others for celebration, and many for negotiations that would reshape the balance of power forever. 6 months after the Great Revelation, Professor Buell stood in her new laboratory aboard Unity Station. The massive space platform orbited between 3 star systems, serving as a meeting place for humans and other species. Through her window, she could see ships from hundreds of worlds docked at the station's many ports. The galaxy had changed dramatically since humanity's return, but not in the way many species had expected. There were no human armies conquering worlds, no demands for tribute or submission. Instead, humans had quietly begun doing what they had always done best, helping others grow and learn. Buell received daily reports about human activities across the galaxy. On the desert world of Aridus, human engineers were teaching the native sandborn people how to tap into underground water sources using ancient techniques. The technology was thousands of years old, but it worked perfectly for Aridus's unique environment. "The humans don't just give us machines," reported Chief Engineer Dustwalker of the Sandborn. "They teach us to understand why the machines work. They want us to improve the designs ourselves." Similar stories came from across space. On the ice world of Glacialis, humans shared heating technologies that could warm entire cities using minimal energy. But they insisted that local scientists learn to build and maintain the systems independently. The approach was completely different from how other advanced species typically helped primitive worlds. Most would simply provide finished technology and expect gratitude. Humans provided knowledge and expected students to become teachers themselves. Biel smiled as she read a report from Ambassador Hana about recent diplomatic work. The ancient border dispute between the Corvan Alliance and the Vex Federation had finally been resolved. But humans hadn't imposed a solution. Instead, they had mediated discussions using negotiation techniques from dozens of extinct civilizations. We showed both sides examples of how similar conflicts had been resolved in the past, Hana had reported. We let them choose which approach seemed best for their situation. They reached their own agreement. We just provided historical context. The most remarkable changes were happening in areas of scientific research. Human scientists began sharing discoveries that had been hidden for millennia, but they did so carefully, making sure other species could understand and build upon the knowledge. Dr. Kim, a human physicist, was working with crystalline researchers on faster-than-light communication technology. Instead of just handing over human designs, she taught them the underlying principles. The crystalline scientists were now developing their own improvements to the original concepts. "The humans treat us like colleagues, not students," reported lead researcher Crystal Song. "They share their wisdom, but they expect us to think for ourselves and contribute new ideas." Even former enemies were finding their place in this new galaxy. The Zarathi Empire had initially prepared for war, but Emperor Zarex discovered something unexpected when human negotiators arrived at his capital world. The humans didn't come with threats or demands. They came with history books and archaeological evidence showing how the Zorathi had originally been a peaceful, artistic species. They offered to help the Empire rediscover its lost cultural heritage. "We remember who you were before the wars changed you," Ambassador Jun had told the Emperor. "We can help you remember too if you choose." Emperor Zarex was still considering the offer, but many Zorathi citizens had already begun learning about their forgotten past from human cultural historians. Veltar visited Buell regularly at her new laboratory. The ancient keeper seemed more relaxed now that the great secret was finally revealed. "You should be proud," he told her during his latest visit. "Your discovery triggered humanity's return at exactly the right moment." Buell looked at her original stone tablets, now displayed in a place of honor in her lab. "I just translated some old symbols. The humans did all the real work." "No," Veltar shook his head. "The humans have been waiting for a sign that the galaxy was ready for truth. Your willingness to question accepted history, to dig deeper despite obstacles, proved that other species had developed the wisdom to handle difficult knowledge." As Buell watched ships coming and going from Unity Station, she realized she was witnessing the beginning of a golden age. Humans had returned not as rulers, but as elder siblings helping younger family members reach their full potential. The galaxy was growing up, and humanity was there to guide it toward a future brighter than anyone had dared imagine.